Dude, that's a great question, man. It's been something that I've been struggling with for a while, and I'm still kind of refining it. But one thing that I'm not going to do is what most people are doing in the medicine space today, which is selling retreats like experiences. Hey,
Okay.
pay your $1,000 or $8,000 or something like $10,000 or more. Exchange that money, come down here, change your life, take some ayahuasca. And for us and many of the indigenous tribes that we work with this medicine, it's a spiritual thing. And
Hmm.
instead of being a transaction, it's not a drug, it's a teacher, it's a spirit that you're
Yeah.
entering into a relationship with. So we're not going to just sell retreats. We're not going to be a retreat center. Now, the information that we're publishing, that we're working with, the indigenous tribes that we're raising their voices and learning from their cosmovision and language, that also shouldn't be a barrier to entry. So currently everything is free, right? You can come in and you can learn. There are courses that unlock over time based on your interaction with the community. So if you come in, you welcome people, you say hello, you write some comments, people share, that sort of thing. You just literally put in what you want to get out of community, and courses unlock right next to that, which is pretty cool. Or you can support us. We like $9 a month or something that helps us pay our elders, but it's not necessary. So we sort of decoupled the idea of monetary from spiritual growth or healing, because a lot of people get kind of worried and weird about that. It's not that I don't like money, but it's that I see this is a bigger vision that needs to happen. And so what I've actually done is recently I just got another remote sales job, so I can work for another company, bring in the money to fund this vision and support it as it grows. I'm convinced that if I get the right number of people that are true fans, that are like, dude, I love you, then it's just as simple as asking like, hey, what do you guys need that you're willing to pay for? Maybe it's, some medicine experiences with longer term integration. Maybe it's like live experiences with the elders. I don't know. I don't know that yet. So I'm kind of playing, not kind of, I am playing the long game, and I'm allowing this to develop the way that it needs to, as opposed to ruining the energy of something that's just starting with trying to monetize it. It's kind of like, I got a little baby toddler. I'm not going to go put him in a factory yet. He's not ready for that. Right? He wouldn't grow up very well. So like let the baby toddler grow, and then you'll start to see the personality, and out of that will come, out of the benefit and value that you provide to the community will reciprocate. And I'm waiting for that moment, and I don't need to rush it.
Hello, everyone. Scott, welcome to Unfiltered Conversations. You're live and your life with Unfiltered Conversations and our viewers here. People can only imagine your lifestyle. West Point grad, military leadership, building companies, and then you hit the kind of, I want to say, collapse or with the forces and just got that real honesty. What I'm expecting today is to explore the message that comes with breaking through walls and also living a life that is simply amazing. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, yeah. It's like off air, just what you was just talking about, like going from, you call it going rogue, and then you like how you got here is simply amazing. So like, I would say, how did you get here?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a small farm, homeschooled in the southeast coast, like North Carolina area. And my parents were very, very religious, man. Like anything that wasn't like their particular brand of evangelical Christian was not something that I was allowed to do. Like I didn't have many friends. I didn't get out much. I had some limited social interaction with the church. Didn't watch movies, didn't listen to music. It was pretty strict, man.
Mm,
And I got out as quick as I could. I wanted to explore the world and figure out, who am I? So I
yeah.
joined the military academy at West Point, got a congressional 5th district slot. My dad, granddad, and uncle were West Pointers, so I came from a military background. But yeah, it was crazy, man. I had a lot
Mm,
to learn, a lot to overcome. I had to figure out how to be popular, or I wasn't really ever popular, but you know what I meant, like how to
yeah,
interact with
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like the first couple of weeks, man, I was like, dude, I'm not going to survive this place unless people
yeah.
like me, and people don't like me because I'm weird as hell. So what do I do? So I learned pretty quickly to like listen to like the jokes that were there. They're like were joking a lot about Family Guy that was really popular. So like I downloaded in secret all the Family Guy episodes and like researched all the, oh, he made a joke about Roadhouse. What's that? And like, oh, it's a movie. It's like I literally had to teach myself pop culture, man. It was pretty rough.
Wow.
It took me a couple of years to become somewhat sociable. And then from there I went
Oh,
into the army. and you're still in the military. One of the things I really love and connected with about the Army is you have a defined purpose and identity, a tribe. You've got the same uniform on as everybody else. The mission is protecting the country, protecting people, and that's it, right? So you don't really have to think that much about your life. You have to show up at the right time, not kill yourself with too much alcohol, and basically everything else will kind of be okay, most of the time, right? If not, that's where first sergeants come in. But that dream was dashed and this is late 2010 or early 2011. I have been promised a Ranger spot for Ranger School and a SF selection spot after we deploy if, I play my cards right. And so before we deploy, we're in the training cycle. I'm a newly minted field artillery officer in charge of a mortar platoon, and I've got a fire support team and a striker to basically decide where the artillery is going to go. And I was out there like an idiot at -40 below zero, long distance snowshoeing to push my mind and body to extreme levels, right? Because I was like listening, reading David Goggins, like I got to do it, and not a good idea, man. You know what happens when you send out a second lieutenant even with a map into anywhere, he's going to get lost, right? I got lost. Big surprise. And it's -40, man. You don't have any leeway. So I ended up getting 4th and 5th degree frostbite to my right foot and 3rd degree to like my first fingertips. I very, very nearly lost all the first digits of my fingertips, and I almost lost half my foot. But I only ended up losing because I had good circulation and I was still very active and I had good medical care. I lost most of the big toe and part of the one right next to it. Right. So I had to learn how to walk again. It was a recovery process. The biggest thing though is this is late 2011, the Army is starting to draw down the officer corps after, they're still in the middle of the war, but it's kind of starting to peter down. So they don't need so many junior officers, especially ones that can't read a map. So they're like, we're going to medically retire you. Okay. So now this is not good, right? I spent my entire life, I'm going to be a West Point officer. This is the only thing I wanted to do. At West Point, dude, I studied Russian and environmental engineering. What am I going to do with that? I'm not going to do anything with that. It's useless. It may be useful if you're like an Army officer, but that's not a thing anymore. Okay. And because of the religious challenges that I had with my childhood, I had drifted away from my parents' understanding of the faith. And so they had basically excommunicated me. I couldn't talk to them. So I've got no family and now no Army family, no identity. So what do I do? What do they tell you to do when you get out? Well, find a good job, get a nice car, get a nice partner, make some money. Okay, will do. Maybe that'll make me happy. A couple years down that road, I'm unhappier than ever, man. The Army had sort of prepared me with a semi-functional alcoholics toolkit. And then I went into corporate sales in the chemical industry in the oil field. And they're like, go get people drunk. Here's an expensive card. And here's a nice car, company car. Go get people drunk, go buy chemicals. It's like, I can do that. Yes, sir, right away. My God, dude. It was the worst thing ever that could have happened to me. And so I'm now even more of a dysfunctional alcoholic, and I've sort of climbed my way up a little bit the corporate ladder, and I'm getting a lot of money, and I'm unhappier than ever. Okay? So what's next? Well, maybe being an entrepreneur will do it. And so I've become an entrepreneur. I learned how to code. I built 2 companies. And both of them were actually pretty successful. And I'm making a lot of money. And it's like, okay, this is it. I'm controlling my own time and I'm still unhappier than ever. And now I'm really frustrated because what other model is there to follow? And so that's what eventually took me into digital nomading. And I don't want to introduce too many new themes here, and I don't want to monologue, so I'm going to shut up pretty shortly after this. But as a way of my recovery process, I had started to learn how to dance salsa. I became a semi-professional salsa dancer for 7 years because A, I need a social activity. I need to meet friends. B, this seems rather good for meeting women if I can dance. And C, I just kind of vibe with the culture. And so that eventually brought me down to Colombia where I've made my home and I've been here for the last 10 years. So I'm going to pause there. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is. Especially I see a lot on social media. People talk about the passport bros, and Colombia is one of those theme countries in which people like to go to. I guess meet the indigenous women there, and hopefully form good combat relationships. I guess because I guess Western women are different, which I don't doubt that. I'm married, so I've been married for a while, so I'm kind
I
of
can see
out
it
of the
being
game
political as
when it
hell over
comes to
there.
yeah. And so when it comes to social relation, I am not the one to ask, because I've been out the game for a minute. So it's I get you. And then also, just trying to form those bonds and finding happiness. It's kind of crazy that it was a great comedian. I think it was Dave Chappelle. He was talking about happiness and he was talking about peace. And like, a lot of times a man's happiness is his peace, and
Mhm.
and vice versa for a lady. So that's pretty awesome. And it's like, I guess my question to you is like, what made sense to you? What was those points in each of those segments, from leaving the military to actually being part of, a oil company where you was, I guess, let's just say, getting clientele, that you realized that this is not something that was making you happy, to going and coding and having 2 companies and realizing this is not making me happy. So what was those defining moments for you?
Well, for me, one of the biggest points was I kept sabotaging myself. I'd get to
Mhm.
like a good relationship and I'd find a way to get myself out of it. I'd make a company that was making 50 grand in profit a month and I would blow it up. And I was like, dude, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What is going on? Like
Mhm.
I say I want the thing, I go get the thing because I'm smart and I'm hardworking and I'm dedicated. And then it's not what I wanted. And I'm like, I just blow it to smithereens. Like, this is not a sustainable way to live life. You know what I mean? And I was putting the blame for that on anything else but me, right? Oh, it's
Mhm.
because of it's somebody else's system. It's what somebody else is telling me to do. I think this whole idea of like purpose in life, we so often look for somebody else to tell us, whether it's a pastor or a mentor or somebody else, like, or a culture sometimes. And I think a lot of times we have to figure that out for ourselves. And so
Yeah.
along the way, I kept sabotaging myself. And I was like, all right, well, hold on. I'm the common denominator. So like maybe it
Yeah.
has something to do with me, you know?
Mhm.
Like, you could probably be happy at all those things, but I wasn't. And it was me just being continually unhappy and waking up kind of like, oh, here's another day, as opposed to full of life and hopeful and joyful that I've been given another day to breathe. Which,
Mhm.
when you really think about it, like the fact that we've got like blood circulating through our bodies and our
Yeah.
organs function and like we have air to breathe and like people around us that love us is like mind blowingly amazing,
Yeah.
right? If you're
Yeah.
not psyched about that, you may want to look at that. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
100%.
And so that's what eventually kind of broke me down to the point where I had multiple, like, leaving the army was tough. Getting kicked out of my family was tough. Getting kicked out of jobs because I was an alcoholic was tough. Destroying businesses because I was just not a good person and didn't have the strength and the integrity to hold that amount of money or that responsibility. That was tough. And it wasn't until I started getting tough with myself that I started turning the corner and started really
Mhm.
taking extreme accountability in the way that like Jocko Willink talks about in his book.
So what was the first non-negotiable you built in the community that you live in right now? Because your personality seems or goes like I guess you don't allow yourself to like go there anymore. Like you say, being a functional alcoholic, blowing stuff up in your own relationships. What was that first non-negotiable for you?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And the medicine, when I refer to the medicine, I walk very closely with ayahuasca, or as we call it, yeah, hey. And the medicine sort of gave me a very few amount of rules for the community. Because when I built this community, I received the vision for the community structure, which is an
Mhm.
actual structure. It's a jungle style. You could think of it as like an octagonal, gigantic barn almost. It's a jungle
Mhm.
barn. It's got 8 pillars and it's thatched with, palm leaves up top. It's got a fire in the middle. And it's sort of like the communal structure for praying, for ceremonies, for living, for sleeping, for interactions, that sort of thing. And so when I received the vision for the Maloka, the medicine was very clear that there weren't to be doors on it. And I was like, what do you mean,
Mm.
no doors? And the medicine's like, look, the pain of you getting kicked out of your family, the pain of you getting medically retired from the military, you know what it's like and have walked many years without family that conditionally loved you or conditionally accepted you. So the rule is no doors, meaning you can't close the doors on somebody. Now, there have to be boundaries,
Mm.
right? Don't be an asshole, right? But basically, outside of that, you're good, man. Like, don't cause harm to the community.
Mm.
But outside of that, you're welcome here always, period. And that's like a non-negotiable rule. I don't care if you two people are like fighting and want to kill each other. Sleep at opposite sides of the Maloka, but this is family and a home and a community for everybody, period, all the time, no exceptions. And we're not going to kick somebody out because they think or feel differently.
What made you want to have this vision, this community, basically of veterans and different people to come together to form this? Like, what was the driving factor for you? Is it just family, like you kind of talked
Well,
about, where you didn't have them, or?
family is one aspect of a community, right?
Mm.
You could also think of a community as family in a sense. So obviously the early trauma is getting kicked out of my own family of origin, having to leave multiple other families like the army because of one reason or another. That's certainly very painful, and it certainly inspired me. But also I think in my own journey, I experienced a lot of the things that we are sort of lacking today. I mean, think of it. So we live in little boxes,
Yes.
ideally in a nuclear family, but not always. We have to drive to go drop our kids off at another little box so they can get educated so that eventually they can live in a box and work in a box. Our families and friends are isolated by like 20, 30 minutes, an hour or more. So we got to go schedule time with our friends. Like, what are we doing? We're isolated, we're segmented, we're not living in community. And I sort of feel and have witnessed that that is what we need as people. And so
Yeah.
when you go talk to the indigenous, when you see how their tribes interact, like they could have one house and like mothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, little baby kids are all sleeping on top of each other practically. They live, eat, breathe, work, play, learn together all the time without exception. So, well, they're pretty happy. We're not, right? We've got
Yeah.
dramatically bad anxiety rates and depression and suicide and all sorts of mental challenges. We're super evolved, super great. Everybody's got a car, but we're crying on our way to work. It's like,
Yeah.
what? So that's where kind of the community aspect comes in, which is let's just reconnect people to community. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to physically move to the jungle, but you can find your people, kind of like Reddit almost. You're familiar with Reddit, right? Reddit
Yeah.
allows you to find your people. Facebook, mostly because of the algorithm, I think, has become extremely polarizing. And so what we've done is we've sort of migrated to a platform called School, which is like Facebook, but without the algorithms, without the ads, and without the nonsense. It's just kind of pared down online community. And that's what we're building right now as an antidote to what I think the Western world is really facing, which is a lack of community and a lack of togetherness.
You know, a lot of different studies when they talk about communities and tribe cultures, especially Trevor Noah talked about it as well, where he's talking about communities coming together, people living together, like you said, mothers, father, grandparents as well. He told a story about, I guess, like if you wanted a house, what do you guys do? And they were like, well, we all come together and we build that
Yeah.
person a house, and then we stay and eat together, and but we're building a house for our community, our tribe, right? And so, like you talked about school, you alluded to that, having an online community presence and stuff like that. So, of course, you're being an entrepreneur, you have to make funding and money and different things of that nature. So, what do you refuse to offer, even if it, would sell on school for your
Yeah.
communities?
Dude, that's a great question, man. It's been something that I've been struggling with for a while, and I'm still kind of refining it. But one thing that I'm not going to do is what most people are doing in the medicine space today, which is selling retreats like experiences. You know, hey,
Mhm.
pay your $1,000 or $8,000 or something like $10,000 or more. You know, exchange that money, come down here, change your life, take some ayahuasca. And for us and many of the indigenous tribes that we work with that work with this medicine, it's a spiritual thing. And
Mhm.
instead of being a transaction, it's not a drug, it's a teacher, it's a spirit that you're
Yeah.
entering into a relationship with. So
Yeah.
we're not going to just sell retreats. We're not going to be a retreat center. Now, the information that we're publishing, that we're working with, the indigenous tribes that we're raising their voices and learning from their cosmovision and language, that also shouldn't be a barrier to entry. So
Yeah.
currently everything is free, right? You
Yeah.
can come in and you can learn. There are courses that unlock over time based on your interaction with the community. So if you come in, you welcome people, you say hello, you write some comments, people share, that sort of thing. You just literally put in what you want to get out of a community, and
Mhm.
courses unlock right next to that, which is pretty cool. Or you can support us. We like $9 a month or something that helps us pay our elders, but it's not necessary. So we sort of decoupled the idea of monetary from spiritual growth or healing, because a lot of people get kind of worried and weird about that. It's not that
Yeah.
I don't like money, but it's that I see this is a bigger vision that needs to happen. And so what I've actually done is recently I just got another remote sales job so I can work for another company, bring in the money to fund this vision and support it as it grows. I'm convinced that if I get the right number of people that are true fans, that are like, dude, I love you, then it's just as simple as asking like, hey, what do you guys need that you're willing to pay for? Maybe it's,
Mm.
some medicine experiences with longer term integration. Maybe it's like live experiences with the elders. I don't know. I don't know that yet. So I'm kind of playing, not kind of, I am playing the long game, and I'm
Yeah.
allowing this to develop the way that it needs to, as opposed to ruining the energy of something that's just starting with trying to monetize it. It's kind of like, I got a little baby
Mhm.
toddler. I'm not going to go put him in a factory yet. He's not
Yeah.
ready for that, right? He
Yeah.
wouldn't grow up very well.
Yeah.
So like let the baby toddler grow, and then you'll start to see the personality, and out of that will come, out of the benefit and value that you provide to the community will reciprocate. And I'm waiting for that moment, and I don't need to rush it.
Okay. You write that preparation and medical evaluations aren't just precautions, they're acts of respect. And what does that respect actually look like in the week before someone shows up to your community?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's very important from a medical standpoint, right? There are medical contraindications. So, one of the things that ayahuasca does from a chemical standpoint is it floods your body with a lot of serotonin, like a
Oh,
lot of serotonin, which is really great because serotonin is an amazing chemical. Now, the
okay.
problem is, like if you're, say, on antidepressants, which sort of make the body grab on and hold on to serotonin, that
Mhm.
presents a problem. There's a thing called serotonin syndrome, which could actually kill you, right? So, you want to be really careful before you do any sort of psychedelic medicine that you've talked to an appropriate person to make sure that you're not going to put yourself at risk, right?
Mm,
So make sure you talk about the medications you're on, that sort of thing. Now, beyond all that, because like where most Westerners come in and they're like, okay, like it's a drug in their minds, right? So I got to do this and not do this. And I got to stop coffee. Da, da, da. Really, that's not the point. Preparation in the spiritual perspective is kind of like getting ready to go to the doctor's office. You're going to
mm,
walk in, you got a problem. Let's just say you got diabetes. Like, okay, I got diabetes. I'm going to go and see the top diabetes specialist in the world, and I'm going to listen to what that person says, and I'm going to go do it. Right. So if the diabetes specialist says, dude, you need to stop eating sugar. And you walk out of that office, you go right to the vending machine, you down a pack of Skittles. Bro, you did not prepare and you're not taking it seriously. So what we like to think is the real preparation is just putting yourself in the idea of, I'm going to go meet a spirit in our way of viewing things that is out to help me heal. And I'm going to follow those recommendations. And usually it boils down to something really simple, right?
yeah.
Relationships, the way you talk, the way you think, the way you eat, living well, really, which is the point. And the point isn't how you feel in ceremony. The point is how you use that in your life to make yourself a better person. So like if you go to church, right, you go to revival, you're like, oh, I'm saved, born again, amazing. And you like kick your neighbor's dog on the way out of the church. It's
Yeah,
like,
you
no,
kind of.
that's not the point, right? The point is like being a better person. And so that's like preparation and integration in one. I hope that made sense.
No, it does. It does. And if integration is like one of your important steps, how does good integration feel like after like 3 weeks later at home, in relationships, like, or even your body, your nervous system?
Yeah. Well, in a word, it sucks, right? Integration is habit change, man. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So integration is like you're going to have some, typically there's like this period of like, I don't want to say high, but it's kind of a high.
Mhm.
Everything looks brighter and nicer and the greens are greener and like you're just nice to everybody.
Mhm.
Real integration is about 2, 3 weeks later when you're triggered.
Mm,
Like your dad says something and you're like, oh, man, this makes you so angry. Like right there, your reaction to that
yeah.
is integration. If you have the
Mm,
capacity to say, okay, hold on, take a breath. What's happening in this moment? How am I responding to this? And am I going to choose how I respond to this trigger or this stimuli?
mhm.
That's integration. And so I kind of say it sucks is because like that's the small work that happens. And where I think people get into a lot of trouble when it comes to psychedelic medicines is it's kind of like, you're Christian, I assume.
Uh, yes, yes.
Okay. So I guess I'll use that as an analogy. Like, let's just say you go to revival, right? So the evangelical church often has like revival weeks, it's like super hypey and you're like, I'm full of the Holy Spirit and all that good stuff. Um, and so it's kind of like, okay, go to revival and I feel great. And then you start to not feel so great the week after. And so instead of changing your habits, you just go to another revival again. It's the same thing. Like you
Yeah.
could just go to another ayahuasca ceremony. It's the substitution of something holy and sacred for what is also holy and sacred, but much more mundane and boring, which
Mhm.
is the daily work, the
Yeah,
discipline, the
yeah,
accountability, the responsibility of your actions and your words, your thoughts, of what you put into your body, how you eat, how you sleep, how you live. And that's really hard for most people. And that's another reason why most of these people try to do it alone.
yeah.
And so that's why we need community. Like you have the unit in the army that grabs you by the back of the shirt if you're faltering on a run, that helps you and says, hey, man, I saw you on the land nav course today. Like you weren't doing so hot. Let's study, that
Yeah.
provides that interchange so that you don't have to feel like you're doing it all alone.
So what's usually the first thing to change? Like, is it the sleep? Like you said, you talked about the conflict, the self-talk or the choices you make. Like, what is it that you see usually for people that actually change first as they attempt to grow themselves?
I usually see expansion of awareness, right? So
Mm.
before I had ever taken, and I'll use another psychedelic medicine as an example, one that actually has a kind of a not so great reputation, MDMA. It's often known as ecstasy or a party drug. It does, for the record, for those that are listening, need to be approached with a lot of caution, because out of all the psychedelic medicines that I'm aware of, this is, I think, the only one that affects the dopamine pathway, which is like the habit forming pathway. So it's really easy to abuse. I'd treat it with a lot of caution, and ideally with a therapist, not as recreational. Anyway, so I'm kind of like this ex-army guy, and I'm kind of a dick, to be honest with you. I don't really, my mind's not very open. And there was this guy called Sam Harris that's a neuroscientist that wrote a podcast, both spoken form and an essay, called Drugs and the Meaning of Life. And in that, he sort of postulated that everything that you experience in a psychedelic experience, you can experience in daily life. Buddhist monks can get there with meditation. Yoga practitioners can get there with, all, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. I was like, okay, great. Well, every time I take a psychedelic medicine, I'm going to look for what I don't experience in my regular life. And so I take some MDA given to me by a friend, and I'm in this club and I'm not drinking, and I just am asking for water at the bar. So got a bottle of water. About 30 minutes later, thirsty as hell. So I asked for another bottle of water, and the bartender goes, "Hey, Scottie, are you back for another bottle of water?" And I was just like, "Do I have a name tag? No, I don't." Dude, how did you remember my name? I was like blown away. I was like, what an amazing level of care that this guy had enough customer service or enough like niceness to remember my name and greet me by name when I came up to order a bottle of water and to remember what I was going to order. I was like, that's amazing. It's like, oh, got to write that down. So I'm sitting like a nerd in the club, man, on the other side, like with my iPhone, like typing out on the notes. Like, okay, I do not feel when others are exhibiting extreme kindness and empathy towards me. And I don't like really notice the small things. I was like, uh-oh, that's a big thing, man. Maybe I should start doing that. And so I started implementing those practices in my life. Now, before that medicine, I had no idea that I was just kind of blazing through. Somebody could do something nice for me, like, okay, great, thanks, bye, but not really appreciate it. And so that's what I'm kind of saying is the thing that most people understand when they start using these psychedelic medicines is that there are other experiences, other worlds, other levels of consciousness, and really kind of expansion of your consciousness outside of just yourself. It's a really magical process.
So that's pretty awesome. You said, in a previous podcast, no substance or practice removes your responsibility. And you talked about it
Correct.
here, like you always make sure you have a therapist, make sure you prep yourself before getting into anything like that. What do you see people, I say subtly trying to hand off the responsibility without realizing it?
Yeah. Well, a lot of this is the fault of sort of our Western medical system, right? So I've used this in other places before, but imagine you've got a headache. Go to the doctor, especially an army doctor, What does he or she tell you? Take
They're
an
trying to
Advil,
give you, yeah. That's the
take an
first thing.
Advil, right? It's symptom prevention, right? But
Yeah.
what's actually wrong with you? You may have a concussion. You may be looking at a screen too long. You may be severely dehydrated, or all three, right? So the Western medical system is, here's a magic pill that makes your symptoms go away, right? And this is basically in everything. Our entire treatment system is more or less not on functional or preventative medicine, but symptom management, right? Now, I'm not going to go into the reasons why. Maybe it's because it's not
Yeah.
very profitable, say, to cure somebody, but we'll leave that for another day, and the conspiracy
Yeah.
theorists who have covered this at length. But the idea here is that the indigenous system and what a slower system of life, or what a functional doc, or what an Ayurvedic doc, or an ancient Chinese doctor would tell you, treat the root cause, not the symptoms,
Yeah.
and maybe both at the same time. Right? If you have a headache, okay, take an Advil, make the headache go away, but don't forget to do your own work to investigate and understand why the headache is there in the first place. Because otherwise, you might have a brain tumor, man. And you're like, okay, keep taking Advil. And meanwhile, that tumor is just going, blah. You don't want that to happen. And so where most people go wrong is they say, okay, I feel better with ayahuasca, or X substance or X thing is going to make all my pains go away. And literally, as I said, there's nothing on earth that's going to make that happen. And you don't need ayahuasca the same way that you don't need Advil to remove a headache. Ibuprofen works, water works, looking at a screen less works, time works, plenty of different ways to solve the same problem. So what I try to encourage people to do is first understand why a certain thing is happening, and then take it on yourself to be responsible enough to figure out how you can solve it. And a quick example of this is I was depressed for like 2 years, really, really depressed, man. I was living at that time in Cartagena. I had a wonderful apartment, like I could see the beach, the waves and the sun. And I was just like the Grinch, man. I was like sleeping in till like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. My sleep schedule was all dysregulated. And I'm listening to a really old lecture from Jordan Peterson where he was actually teaching. He's like, hey, I'm a clinical psychologist. And when people come in that are really depressed to my office, I was like, bing, I'm listening now. I ask them what time they eat and what time they wake up and what time they go to sleep, because your circadian rhythm and your diet are some of the most important factors in terms of whether you're depressed or not. I'm like, oh my God, nobody's ever told me this. How could I not have thought of it? But also, there's an antidepressant checklist. There's like a list of things that I can do and maybe that I'm not doing that's probably making me depressed. So I literally studied a little bit, made a list, daily exercise, walking in the sun, waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, cutting out alcohol, cleaning up my diet, daily connection with friends, daily progress towards something that I believed in. I was like, all right, here's the deal, man. I'm going to do this for a month, every day, like clockwork, like army discipline. And if I'm not feeling good at the end of that, I'm going right to the doctor and getting the pills.
Yeah.
30 days later, man, no depression. And anytime it comes back, anytime ever, it's one of those things on the list that I'm missing. Now, I want to clarify, I'm not saying that this works for everybody in all certain cases, right? Sometimes brain chemistry is out of whack, or you need something to kind of get yourself to baseline. So if that's you, talk to a medical professional, please, and don't take some bearded guy's opinion that you saw on the internet, especially not the one that lives in a jungle, right? Don't come after me for that. That said, responsibility is the biggest thing here, man. And most of your problems, you can fix yourself, but we don't want to do that because it's work.
Yeah. Man, that we can have a whole nother podcast about that, especially. What is the hardest criticism you face in this work that you do? Either from the military or when you talk about the spiritual world, and and what actually, I guess, what parts are actually taught to you that I would say that's missing, that's something that people need, that you think?
Well, I do love the criticism angle because I get quite a lot of that. If you haven't noticed, I'm lacking a significant amount of pigment or melatonin in my skin cells. And my wife is Nutavi Indian. She comes from a lineage that was all but wiped out. Like there are not very many Nutavi Indians in this part. It's this particular part of Antioquia, which was heavily colonized. And like other tribes could escape deep into the jungle or way up the top of the mountains. The Nutabe, the Tahamias, other groups in this area didn't have that ability, so they were nearly wiped out. So my wife was able to trace her lineage to that group, and once I got married with her, the tribe adopted me and officially and legally as a member of the indigenous community. So now that I'm building an entire community based around, led by, and guided with indigenous people, like we've got real elders like that have never come out of the jungle, never come out of the mountain, that are sharing their wisdom and their knowledge with people. And I'm running advertisements just to get people into this free group. And about once a day, inevitably, there's some woke warrior that's like, oh my God, how could a white person be telling us this? It's like, well, first of all, is it true or not? And second of all, like, I can't ever say this, right? But I am actually indigenous, right? One of the things that one of my elders told me, because I was like, dude, you're teaching me so many valuable things. This is a Marui elder. They come from deep in the Amazon jungle on the southern border of Colombia. And he's like, Scottie, don't worry about that. We don't care at all about your skin color. Not a bit. Do you talk like us? Do you think like us? Do you live your life like us? You are one of us, period. And so one of the biggest things that I'm trying to overcome is this, which I think is kind of on the it's kind of fleshing out to see finally, which is this over woke idea. I'm not talking about like going in and representing someone's traditions as your own, but it's also not carrying around this tremendous sense of guilt just because of your skin color. Like that's not right either. And so that's one of the harshest criticisms that I face really in all of this is sort of people that are trying to judge me based on the color of my skin as opposed to the content of my character.
Yeah. And I get that. Trust me, I totally get that. It's truly different. Like I lived in Japan for 7 years, and I would say my first year there was probably the most pivotal to me because that's when I actually started learning the language as best as possible. And when I started to learn the language that I can actually communicate with the individuals, elders, older individuals in Okinawa, I was like, we had a candid conversation. I was like, do you guys not black people or no? They're like, no, we don't like Americans either, and not all Americans, just some. They like that. It's so unique because America has different, skin colors, races, creeds, and different things of that nature, but it has a problem because y'all are oversensitive and y'all don't you don't ask the tough questions or y'all don't have the tough conversations because of political correctness, wokeism,
Dude, and this is like 10 years ago, man. If you had that
yeah,
conversation now, it's like you can't even make
yeah,
jokes these days.
yeah, yeah,
It's getting really bad. I
100%.
mean, this is a lot of what I really admire Chappelle for,
Mhm,
honestly. I think that Chappelle has sort of started to bring back what I think the true role of comedians is, which is kind of like the court jesters of old times. That you kept a
mhm,
jester around because the king needed to hear wisdom and feedback that no one else would give them because they were afraid of being executed, right? So comedians can comment on the cultural zeitgeist and what's going on in a way that's funny, but also kind of protected. You don't kill a comedian because
yeah,
they are necessary to sort of prevent the culture from getting crazy out of whack.
yeah.
And I think we've lost a lot of that.
And so it's like, I was just amazed and still amazed. Like even when I go to a lot of different cultures, they don't really see, like you said, the skin color. They see the purpose. Am I trying to learn their language? Am I trying to adopt, or am I trying to integrate myself into something? Not trying to take away from nothing, but hopefully add to it, in the sense of bringing my understanding and bringing my shared collectiveness. Of being a part of it. And so I get exactly what you're saying, and I'm sorry that you have to deal with people who are very small-minded in that way.
It's all right, man. Like everybody's got. I'm not complaining about it. It's just one of those
Yeah,
things. You asked me what the greatest criticism is. That's it.
yeah. Eh, when you're talking about, how to say it is asa.
Okoyai
Okay, the
or ayahuasca. Yeah.
yeah, ayahuasca. You know,
If you say it 3 times straight, you get kicked out of the military. So be careful.
do you see this medicine? Like you said, drug getting commercialized, and what worries you most about it? What do you think will get damaged first when it comes to that?
Well, that's another great question. It is being commercialized already. It's being firstly
Mm,
commercialized in this idea that the reason why this practice in medicine has been safely guarded for so many centuries and millennia, because we have archaeological and historical evidence of this being used back at least 3,000 years, maybe more, is
oh,
because it's very carefully guarded and it's used within community and it's used in certain frameworks. Now, part of the problem and part of the beauty of us up in the north, like the Western culture, is we're pretty sacrilegious and we're pretty arrogant. Like, oh, I could do this myself. I don't need anybody. Like, well, you kind of do with this one. You know what I mean? It's kind of
yeah,
like it's a very, very powerful tool. Kind of like
yeah,
you don't want to hand a toddler like a surgery razor blade, right?
mm,
Not a good idea. So like you got to learn how to use the razor blade first, and it's that kind of thing. So first of all, it's being commercialized, and that's not good from an energetic or spiritual perspective. But that also prevents a lot of people that could benefit from it from not accessing it. And then there's a second thing that's happening, which is the general way of acting in the Western world is to come in, colonialize a particular spot of land, take the natural resources, and then extract only what you want from it. Okay. So most of
mhm,
the pharmaceuticals in the West have been done this way from the Amazon. You find a tree that like its sap kind of like cuts headaches. Okay, great. And then you like refine it, take out just the active chemical compound that cuts headaches, and then you get aspirin. That's not an exact analogy, but you understand the idea.
yeah,
Well, the problem is you've taken the plant that evolved in a certain way out of its natural habitat, and you've eliminated all the additional chemical compounds that work in tandem with the one that you want to provide an
yes,
overall safe experience. Okay, so what happens? Well, you make people sick, or you get drugs that create more side effects than the symptom that they're actually trying to solve. And it's just like this horrible catastrophe. So
yeah,
with ayahuasca, they're turning it into gummies. And like, if anybody ever sees this, please, please don't do this. If like I ever meet somebody that's taking an ayahuasca gummy, I'm very spiritual. I will drop kick you, bro. I will do it. Don't even test me. So the idea here is it's like, they want the gummy. They're like, oh, I want the benefits of ayahuasca, but I don't want to do that like nasty vomiting thing, or I don't want to have diarrhea. Well, it turns out in Western medicine, we don't have any purgative medicines really. So what's the
mm,
reason that it's very good to have a medicine that makes you vomit and cleans out your entire digestive tract? Well, in this part of the world, the biggest problem that you deal with is parasites. We actually in
yeah,
the Western world have quite a few parasites that we need to deal with. And the purging physical mechanism of ayahuasca, although uncomfortable, but not in the way you think, it's actually much better, actually really helps with that. And additionally, it eliminates a whole specter of the not specter, but a whole segment of the experience itself, which is this idea of I'm going to go in and surrender. And I may lose my mind a little bit. I may shit myself. I may vomit and it might be uncomfortable, but I'm going to do this because I'm going to put my skin in the game to heal. It's kind of like, if you take that away, again, it even further removes you from this idea of responsibility.
Mm.
In the Chronicles of Narnia, there was this really great example. C.S. Lewis wrote about one of the princes called Edmund. Have you read this book?
Yeah.
So
That's what we said.
yeah, like Edmund turns into a dragon, right? And he's not very happy being a dragon. He's like, this kind of sucks. I read that story as a kid and was like, dude, I'd love to be a dragon, man. Like, what did he do? Let me follow that. So maybe not the best example in the world, but Edmund does not like being a dragon, okay? And so he's sitting there, he's trying to scratch off his own scales, like, okay, not happening, And Aslan is like, dude, I got some news for you, man. I can make this happen, but I'm going to do it for you, and it is going to suck. And it's kind of that thing, right? Do you want to actually heal? If so, trust the people that have been carrying this medicine in safety. Do it in the right way. Approach it in the right format, or it's wasting your time, and it's sacrilegious to the idea of like, okay, I got diabetes, the example I used earlier. You go in, the doctor says, got to quit eating sugar, man, and you're mainlining Skittles. You've wasted your time, your money, and you disrespected the doctor whose only intent and purpose is to help you along your way. Don't be that guy. Sorry to get preachy.
No, that's perfectly fine. And as we kind of like continue to explore like the do's and don'ts, and then also I want to explore like your military background, and it's probably going to help me as well. When a veteran loses their uniform, because I'm on the fence on if I should retire or not, because I've been in 24 years, so I'm at the point where I can retire. Push the button any day. So I guess the question is, when in your communities, when you have veterans that come there who lost their uniform, what do you think they're really losing? And what do you think they need to rebuild first when it comes to that purpose, relationships, and also, their community?
Well, it's a profound loss of identity, and you don't really understand this until you get out. You don't understand how much of your identity is defined by that uniform and defined by your position, and part of it's good, part of it's bad. In the military, like your rank determines a lot of the respect that you get. In the civilian world, it's not about that at all, man. It's like you got to start basically from ground zero in most senses. But I think the profound loss of identity and purpose are the biggest thing, because identity and purpose are some of the hardest things to develop for yourself, and they take time. And those are some of the strongest things the military gives you. So first of all, like, prepare for a period of time where you're going to be completely and utterly discombobulated, and know that that's okay. It's going to take you some time to figure yourself out, and maybe even what you want to do, because like you don't have a choice in the military. They tell you what to do, you go do it, whether you like it or not. But now you have that ability. So you've sort of like unlocked a new level of life, which is not only I can go in whatever direction I want. And that's kind of a oh shit moment in and of itself. But also, like, if I choose the wrong direction and I'm not happy, I can choose another direction. So it's like one of the things that the data shows us about military transitioning people is that they often change jobs and careers within the first 3 years at much higher rates than anybody else. And then they kind of find that groove. So number one, start doing some work on identity and purpose. It helps if you're part of an additional community outside of the military, maybe AA, maybe a church, maybe involved in something, or if you've got a hobby that you can kind of latch onto, that really helps. And then purpose. Like, what do you want to do? You came from whatever your role, your idea of getting into the military was. Some of your purpose has probably ideally been adopted to this idea of you're serving the community, you're serving the nation. And so you're going to need something to replace that, or everything else that you do is going to feel like going from color to gray in a sense. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
And my final question is, especially about your transitions, right? What is something you wish more people understood about you and your work that they really don't ask today?
I want people to understand why I do this and why I've dedicated the rest of my life to helping people heal. It comes from the deep pain of 15 years or more of like without family, without purpose, without mission, drowning myself in alcohol, destroying my body, destroying relationships. I really want to save people time. That's what I want people to understand. It's like, look, kind of like if you have a toddler or if you have a small kid, right? Sometimes they have to learn by banging their head into the end of the coffee table that it's not a piece of furniture to be run around, right? But sometimes you could just listen to your dad, like, hey, don't run through there. You might hit your head on the coffee table. So it's like, as we grow in wisdom as people, I think one of the best things that we could do is learn how to learn vicariously, learn
Mm,
through the challenges of others. And so that's what
mm,
I would want people to understand. It's like, I'm not telling you this is the way to live life. I'm going to demonstrate a way of living life and a shorter way to achieve it. And if it resonates with you, well, boy, I got some stories for you, man. And I wouldn't wish on anybody the long time that my stubborn ass had to take to figure this basic stuff out. Don't be me.
yeah. The floor is yours. Tell us about anything and everything that you want us to know, that you think we need to know, and how could we move forward and support you?
Yeah. Super simple, man. Come join our community on School. I'll make sure that I DM you or I'll respond to your email with the link. It's free to join. We have a
Mhm.
bunch of people in there. Come and find your people. We don't care if you're Buddhist, Christian, atheist, if you want to take plant medicines or don't. This is about ancestral healing, about spiritual growth, about exploration. Whether you're an artist or a musician or just a seeker or curious, we want you here because we need to come together as humanity more. The more we come together, the more we learn about people whose views differ than us, the more we reestablish our ability to have actual conversations, even with people, and especially with people we disagree with, the sooner we can drag ourselves out of this nonsense and stop trying to kill each other and go back to like growing food and taking care of our children. Right?
Mhm.
That should be our priority. So that's what we're here to do. And we'd love to have you join. And it's free. So come on in. If you don't like the vibe, we'll see you on the flip side. That would be what I would say.
Okay. Scotty, thank you so much for bringing both your backbone, your tenderness to this conversation. I really appreciate how seriously, you take your responsibility, safety,
Thanks,
and then
man.
also what happens after after you have this breakthrough, right? And I'm also grateful for you for sharing your story with us, from going with your family to the military, from out the military, different jobs, and now with your tribe and community is man, it's an experience. So thank you.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. West Point would not be proud of me, but I'm proud of me. That's what counts.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. All right, everyone. Peace.